authors. Wendy Walker, our moderator for this evening, is the author of psychological suspense novels, All Is Not Forgotten, Emma in the Night Before, Don't Look at Me, What Remains, and the newest American Girl, which is actually on the table and it's not even out yet. Her novels have been translated into 23 foreign languages, topped bestseller lists both nationally and abroad, and have been optioned for both television and film. Jenny Jackson has a great intro, but we're going to skip it because she's not here. But she will be here hopefully before the end of the year. Jamie Beck, who I met probably 15 years ago, is an award-winning Wall Street Journal and USA Today best-selling author of 18 novels. Her latest, The Beauty of Rain. Her titles have been translated into multiple languages and have sold more than 3 million copies. Jamie enjoys dancing around the kitchen, cooking while cooking, that's a good combo, and hitting the slopes in Vermont and Utah. Above all, she is a grateful wife and mother and very patient and supportive family. Rea Frey is an award-winning best-selling author of several nonfiction books and the suspense novels Not Her Daughter, Because You're Mine, Until I Find You, and The Secret of Our House. Her latest women's fiction novel, The Other Year, was published in August. Known as the book doula, Rea helps other writers birth their stories into the world. If you're interested in knowing more about that, go to her website, reafrey.com. And we'll begin, and we'll take questions at the end.
Yes, okay. So the other piece of good news is that I know these two ladies very well. And so we are a smaller group, but I think we can get into some more interesting stuff about our journeys and what it's like to be in this profession. And we're going to have an amazing conversation. So thank you, everyone, for coming out and joining us. So I want to just kick it off by allowing these lovely ladies to talk about their latest books and give us a setup, and we'll dive into those books, and then we'll get down and dirty about our lives as authors. Okay, here we go. On a Tuesday night in Darien, Connecticut.
Oh, I'll start. Hello, everyone. I need to rewrite my bio after hearing it compared to both of yours. Again, I'm Rea Frey, not Rea Frey as it looks like. I blame my parents for that lovely spelling. So my new book, The Other Year, is a bit of a departure from the types of books that I usually write. I am more usually in the suspense thriller genre. So this book was one of those books that just kind of came to me in a moment. But it is about a single mother named Kate Baker who is really navigating a year in her life. She's an agricultural engineer. She's raising a very precocious 9-year-old daughter, Olivia, and she's been single for a long time, but is maybe thinking about getting involved with her best friend, Jason, who is a widow, also raising an only child. And when the book starts, she's taking her daughter on vacation. Her daughter's so excited, she darts into the water, even though there is a red flag kind of rippling in the wind, and her daughter disappears beneath the waves. And this is where the book kind of gets a little bit of magical realism in that it splits into two dual timelines. So if anybody's seen the movie Sliding Doors from the 1990s, one of my favorites, it's a little bit like that, where you are getting 2 chapter 1s, 2 chapter 2s, 2 chapter 3s. So the book splits, and in 1 year we follow Kate. Her daughter pops right back up to the surface of the ocean. Life carries on as normal. And in the other year, her daughter does not resurface, and she must really kind of grapple with losing her child. And the reason I even wrote this type of book was I just wanted to see if we really do end up where we're supposed to, no matter what, or if something terrible like that loss that happens, does that send us on a different trajectory entirely? So yeah, comedy. It's a comedy.
Hi. So a little bit of similar, my book also deals with grief. Mine was inspired by a real life thing that happened to me. I had a really bad year of 3 surgeries. The final one was a life-saving, like emergency surgery. And I spent 9 days in the hospital, just hooked up to every imaginable thing and really not sure what was going to happen. And as you would imagine, it really forces you to reevaluate your life and think about what's important. And so my book, The Beauty of Rain, is really the themes that are in that book about sort of live now, not when, were inspired from this very personal place. The characters and the plot are not at all personal. And so mine is a sister story. One sister has an autistic child and her family is struggling, but then they win the lottery and they think, oh, our problems are going to be solved, like we all do, right? You know, you dream about those billion-dollar lottery tickets. But the first thing they do is spend the money to take a big vacation, and on this vacation she decides to take some me time, and her husband and son go off on this tour, this boat tour, and the boat explodes and they die. So the book really starts 9 months later, but that's the relevant backstory. And so she moves in with her sister. She's suicidal. Some of you might remember 15 years ago or so here that Madonna Badger in Stanford, whose house burned down, and she lost all 3 kids and her parents in that one fire. And I researched what's happened to her since, and listened to her I've listened to her TED Talk and read stuff to try to make sure that I was portraying Amy's journey, in a way that would be realistic for someone who maybe has lost everything that really was important. And it's really a story of Kristen is the other sister, and she's the overambitious, has 2 healthy kids, is in a marriage, and is stretched to the limit, like a lot of us feel. And so it's the story of how these 2 are impacting each other and trying to, one's trying to get her sister to find reasons to live, and the other one's trying to get her sister to wake up and pay attention to what's really important. And I won't say more than that because it'll ruin the story.
So, yeah, 2 very humorous light books to dive into. No, but these books are so, they're so poignant, and they deal with these issues that are just so profoundly human. And as we, walk through life, these things happen to us, to people we know and love, to other people in the world that we observe and feel compassion for. So how both of you wrote in different genres. Rea, you started out writing thrillers, or that was your first big hit, was a thriller. And Jamie, you wrote romance for many years. How did you land on this new genre, which I guess we would call upmarket fiction, and how did you land on these themes? Because both of you, you've touched on, came from like personal stories.
So for me, I would say that all my books, I would call them relationship fiction. Whether it's a romantic relationship or a sister or a friendship rift or whatever, all of my stories to date have really focused on or deal intimately with a relationship between 2 or 3 main characters. So in that regard, it really hasn't been a big change so much as a subtle shift away from romance. And part of that was because I'm 57 and it was getting hard to write 28-year-olds dating.
We had this conversation. we see each other fairly frequently, and we had this whole conversation, and you said to me that you didn't think you could write these romance stories anymore and I'm 56. So, yeah. And I was like, what? Yeah. What do you mean? Well, and yeah, but it's about
it's tough because I met my husband when I was 27, and we've been together since then. And I have a 22-year-old who's out there dating, but she just got out of college, so that's also different. So and the things I wanted to talk about changed as we get older. I wanted to talk about, parenting issues and aging parent issues and all the things that we deal with. I think one of my favorite things about writing is really the letters I get from readers who feel seen. I got one today, actually. I had a trauma romance about a rape victim, and she's like, I've never read a romance where I saw myself. And it was like very heartwarming. So anyway, that's how I came to this story.
I love that. I too kind of write, I feel like, about relationships. I love that relationship fiction. I feel like, though, I write about parent-child relationships a little bit more, and I play out my worst fear as a parent on the page. I did that with my suspense novels, with kidnappings and, things that just parents do not want to happen. But with this book, to be quite honest, we were with the same publisher, and I had 4 books with them. And to be, again, brutally honest, because I just was not super happy with the way that was going book by book, and decided that I wanted to try something new. But it was the first time that I was out of contract, meaning I wasn't getting paid for a book. I didn't have a deadline, and I had produced 4 books, 4 years in a row, was pretty tired, and just thought about what I really wanted to write next. And this book did come from a very visceral experience of taking my daughter to the beach, and her going in when there was a red flag, and she did disappear for just a moment. And that book, the idea of just these 2 parallel journeys came to me in a flash, because I think a lot of us, if we're parents or maybe we're divorced or whatever, we ask these big what if questions. I'm a huge what if person. Like, what if I hadn't gotten married? What about if I didn't have kids? What would my life look like? And I think that's super fun to ask those questions on the page. And when I wrote it, I didn't set out necessarily to change genre. I just wanted to write the story and see kind of where it ended up. And it was really fun to kind of amidst the tears, of writing this book, but just finding, kind of finding my voice again, but in a slightly different way.
So both of these books deal with grief and loss, what if questions, just some of the sort of darker things that we can experience going through life's journey. When you were writing it, how did you calibrate the sort of extent to which you were going to go to different places with the grief and the loss? And this is something that we grapple with all the time with our agents and our editors, trying to give life to the stories and to the inspiration for the stories, especially when they're personal, right? And they come from a place that we know is real. It's like, this exists, I feel it, I want to put it into this book and explore it through fiction so other people can also, tap into those feelings and maybe have a cathartic experience reading it, as well as be, entertained by the story. But we always get pushback, right, about, oh, this is a little too dark, and it might be too sad, or it might be too, something to reach a wide audience. Was that an issue when you were writing about these serious topics, and how did you grapple with that?
I think it definitely was for me. I mean, anytime you have a book where someone loses a child, I was a little worried that no mother specifically was going to want to touch that. But at the same time, grief is a part of life, and it can lead to beautiful transformations and can lead to a lot of hope and sometimes joy and change for a lot of people. But I remember giving it to my agent. She was like, oh, I mean, this is, we might have to dial this back. And I was very concerned that no one was going to want to buy something that did. I mean, there's a lot of hope. There's romance in it. There's all these things, but grief is a part of life. So my editor, when I did sell it, she did have me dial back some of the scenes. But it was a real conversation, because I didn't want to just bypass this mother's grief. I mean, because women unfortunately do lose their children every single day, and that's not often shown in kind of upmarket fiction. So I wanted to really go there.
So, and I haven't finished yours, but I've read it. I've read it. It's hard because you really start in the immediacy of the pain, whereas mine starts, like I said, 9 months later, really. So she's still grieving, but she's not in the immediacy of it. And so, and because I knew my theme was really very much about looking for the beauty in life and what really matters, I wanted, the grief had to be a part of it, but I didn't want that to be the overwhelming part of it. So right away, the book opens, so this is not a spoiler of any kind, with her having the birthday party for her son, what would have been his 5th birthday party. So you see her making these attempts to move forward, and latch on to something normal, to a celebration that, she'll always be his mother even if he's not there, and things like that. So that's kind of, I took a little bit of a lighter approach to that. In terms of the editor, we had some big fights about the book, but more about the ending than anything else, which I can't really talk about because I don't want to talk about why we had fights about that. But so that was, but I insisted on what I felt was the necessary things that I needed to do in order to drive my theme home.
So who won that argument?
I did.
Oh, you did. Okay. All right. So when you read The Beauty of Rain and read the ending, you will know that it was hard won to get that ending in the book, and that is and that is the process that we often go through. So I want to get into where you go from once you have a concept for a book. So any writers out there who want to geek out on the process, we're going to go there a little bit now. When you get this concept, where do you go from there in terms of telling a story? Because one of the most difficult things, I think, as a writer that I grapple with is, you get this story idea, and in my genre, which is psychological thrillers, there has to be a twist, so you torture yourself over finding that twist and that surprise at the end. But then, how do you tell this story? How do you structure it? Both of you have 2 points of view. Rea, you have the same character in sliding doors, sort of 2 different scenarios, and Jamie, you have 2 different characters, the sisters. How did you decide to structure the book that way? What goes into that process?
Okay, so like I said, relationship fiction, 2 characters, so obviously I knew they each needed a point of view, and the structure from a timing perspective, I had reasons why I didn't want to start it in the immediacy of the death of the child and the husband, but also it actually opens, there's a very brief 1.5-page prologue where Amy is in a car accident, and it's a little bit vague. You don't know what really happened. You just see her being taken into the hospital, and that they see that she has scars on her wrist from a former attempt, so you're not sure. And then we go back a few months and then move forward in time. And I did that to put that question in the reader's mind, like, was that another attempted suicide, or was that an accident? What's going on? And it sort of helps to me. Like, I like books like that because they help pull me through. Like, I'm reading to find the answer to that question up to that point. I'm a plotter, so I have a really hard time coming up with ideas for stories. That's not, like, I have friends who just constantly see plots everywhere they go. That is not me. But when I have an idea, or I really kind of start with a theme, like something that's important to me that I want to say. And then I try to think of, like, who are the characters that would be the worst suited for this theme, like that will have the hardest time learning this lesson, so create the most friction. And then I have to plot everything, even if halfway through writing it I change direction, but I need to have that set when I start, otherwise I just flail around like hopelessly, and just lots of writerly doubts come out, and I'll never get it done.
Oh, I guess I'm a flailer then. As I'm listening to this, I'm like, yeah, interesting. This was probably one of the most structured, quote unquote, structured books I had to write because I've never done dual timelines. But the book starts with a prologue before it splits, and then there's an epilogue that kind of ties it all together. But in between are these 2 journeys. But I did, as the title suggests, the other year, we're following her for 1 year. So the book is actually split into the 4 seasons. So the way that it's written, it toggles back and forth from one storyline to the other storyline, chapter by chapter, and that's actually how I wrote it. I could not go through the sad story all the way through and write it without having a reprieve every other chapter. So it was actually even though I didn't do like a 10-page plot or a 15-page plot, I really did kind of know where I was going with this book and wanted to hit certain markers at certain times. So it was probably one of the most orderly books. I was, again, crying half the time, but it was way more structured than I typically am with a book.
I want to know how you come up with?
Yes, how do you? Are you a big plotter? I saw you.
I'm a
nodding.
plotter, yeah. So there's the reason I did my fist bump is that among writers, there are plotters and there are pantsers, which means you fly by the seat of your pants. And it's always a question on every panel. She's a pantser, she's a plotter. I have been shocked at how many pantsers are out there. Every time I'm doing a panel and interviewing people, I expect there to be like an even split, and there's really not. I don't know how the pantsers do it. I have to plot because when I sit down and I face the blank screen every day, I would have a massive anxiety attack if I didn't know, okay, well, at least I know I have to hit these plot points today, and then I can figure the rest out, and then it'll start to flow. But when I sit down, I have to know what I'm doing, or I feel like I'm driving somewhere without a map or GPS or anything. Plot twists. I mean, and this is what's so frustrating, I think, about writing, is that they come to you, or they come to me, when I least expect it. So I can sit at my desk and I can try to focus on it and think about it, and I'll get nothing. And then I'll be driving, doing errands, or I'll be in the shower, or I'll be on the phone with my kids or something, and it like releases my thoughts, and then all of a sudden I'll be like, oh my God, she was never there, or whatever it is, Like, it's just, and sometimes even in the middle of the night. And so the notes app on my phone is like insanely ridiculous. It just has these ridiculous things on it. And some of them are good and some of them are bad. But I'm like, and then it's a monkey from outer space. Excellent. Back to sleep, And then I wake up in the morning like, oh, no, not so good.
But that's so important today with writing, because I think so much of writing is thinking about writing and processing, and we're not often free to do that anymore because we're always with our phones, we're always consuming something, and so we don't have that precious uninterrupted time, which is why when you're in the shower, when you're driving, and you're not multitasking or trying or efforting, those ideas come. And I think it's such a huge part of writing that no one talks about. And we don't really have a lot of time now as authors to just think about our ideas and process.
Yeah, we were just talking about this at dinner before we got here, and
Here we go.
Yeah, I know. We're not here.
Here we go. Here we
Buckle
go.
up, Rea. Here we go again. So yeah, when authors get together, we frequently talk about this. And let's get into it. Let's talk about what our lives are like as authors. I woke up this morning and I had to pick Rea up from the train. I knew I had a few hours before she was arriving, and I was determined to get my pages done because I'm really trying to get a book finished by like November 1st. And I wanted to get 10 pages done, which is a lot for a day, about 3,000 words, I guess. Is that right? And I woke up, and then I had an email I had to deal with, and I didn't know how to answer it, and then time went by, and then I got stressed out, and I got emotional about something in the email, and then I sat down to write, and it was gone. And this is, for me, I was a lawyer before, investment banking, like, it's, you just sit down, you do your work, you can do it an hour here, an hour there, or 4 hours in a row. With writing, if that headspace is gone, it sounds so woo-woo, and I'm not woo-woo at all, I'm always rolling my eyes. She is. I'm always rolling my eyes. But right, it's like so how do you structure your day? How do you get the creative energy? What does it look like when you start writing a novel?
I don't have a structured day like most writers. I mean, I envy writers that are like, I sit down and I write, from 8 to 4 every day. That is not me. I homeschool my child. I have a business. And then writing books in these really short, fast containers. And so I have learned to not put pressure on myself. I follow my urges. If I have the urge to write and just really feel like this idea is very compulsive and I can sit down every day, I think writing is creating momentum, honestly. And when I step away from it, it's really hard to get back into it. But I don't always have the time to do it every single day. So I really I'm very deadline driven, and I'm a morning writer. If I don't do it first thing in the morning, it's harder to get to. But I just really try to find, the most important thing for me with my writing time is focus time. So no phone, no 50 tabs open on my computer, just really trying to do deep work. And I can get a lot done if I'm not, looking at a million other things, which I think is, again, like I just said, harder today.
So I'm a little more structured than that. I kind of, in the morning, for me, I don't do my best free thinking. So I use the mornings to do like the business of writing, emails, social media, connecting with, I have some like writer accountability groups and things like that we like talk and support each other. And so I tend to do a lot of that in the morning when I'm still sort of easing into the day and just trying to get myself geared up for writing. And I didn't used to have such a hard time, to be honest, doing that. But now it's been a decade. I've had some great career successes and I've had some setbacks. And so it's a little harder now to game up. So I kind of need the morning to like get there. But the afternoon is when I find I can do my best like forward work. Sometimes I'll reread what I wrote the day before and comb through it to remind myself, where was I going? Then to kind of get back into the, like you said, the flow, the momentum of the story. And plus I can just clean up things, and see like, why did I say that? That's stupid. And I just kind of repeat that until I'm done.
Yeah, and I have to write first thing in the morning, and I have to be on. I find if I do it in consecutive days, I can stay in it. And it's like you go. It's like you have to find that channel, and then you get in it, and then you can go. But landing in that like channel in your brain where you can focus and set the phone down is actually really hard, and it makes it. I think it's a very frustrating job that way, because you can't necessarily control the switch, right, that allows you to come up with this stuff and put stuff on the blank page.
You can't control the switch, but what I love about it is you can control everything else about the story, right? Like you get to, and I think that's what I love most about writing is it's the only place in my entire life where I get to decide what happens, what's said, what the consequences are, and have an ending that is satisfying. So I will never give it up. It's like the only place I have that.
Yeah, and so let's talk about that a little bit, because people ask me a lot why I write dark things, some really sort of dark thrillers. And for me, there's something really cathartic about controlling, right? Controlling, having that seed of like fear. What am I most afraid of? What causes me the most like pain? What are those dark thoughts? And then I put them into fiction, and I control everything that goes on in the story, and then I usually will take a step back and think, okay, well, let me see what will be maybe appealing or resonate with other people, right? Like recognizing that maybe I'm not like completely normal. So what will actually, maybe I tone it down. I always have to tone it down and go lighter than what I want to do. But when you were writing these books and other books too, your other genres, is there a point where you identify that you're sort of doing something that's cathartic for you, and then switch it up to try to make it more like a detached intellectual process, so it's more, might resonate with more people, or do you just go for it and satisfy your own desires?
I think it's a little bit of both, but I have a really hard time when I write. My husband jokes that he could be on fire and I wouldn't know it, because I like channel. I don't really remember writing any of my books, like where I was and the thought process. It's just a very interesting experience, but I love, again, playing on my biggest fears. Like first book was kidnapping. A child gets kidnapped. Second one was someone dying and leaving their child without a guardian. Third was going a blind widow, so going blind. Losing my eyesight's always been a fear. Fourth one was a plane crash. This one was losing a child. But then I think keeping your reader in mind too, and what might resonate, with them. But I have a book coming out in March that's my first true thriller with murder, and oh my God, I was like, I love murder. Is so much more fun to write about. I wasn't as emotionally attached. I was like, this is so fun. So I don't know what that says about me, but it was really fun, and I liked that a lot.
So I think what's interesting is in all these answers, and mine as well, and most writers that I know and have these discussions with, whether you're writing a thriller that's not necessarily a personal story, or you're writing something that feels very highly personal, there's always a bit of us in the books, right? Because we bring our own lens, our own experiences. I always say the best thing about my dysfunctional childhood is that it has given me a lot of material to draw on in terms of writing complicated relationships. And I think that's a consistent thing in all of my books, is learning how to love people in your life who are far less than perfect or who have hurt you. Redemption is a huge theme in most of my stories. And that's, I think, it wasn't conscious, but on the other hand, it's been a huge theme in my life, learning how to forgive people that I feel were supposed to have my back and didn't, and things like that. So it bleeds in to the story. And I think that probably your fears, bleed into your storytelling. In my book, I didn't set out to be Kristen in the book, but as I was writing it, I was like, oh, I think Kristen is looking a little bit too much like me. I should shift some things here.
You're totally Kristen. Kristen is totally you, just saying.
It was a lot, but I really didn't mean it to be, but I did recognize, like, that's where my questions and my choices and things were coming through her.
But I feel like you started out as Amy, maybe. Or that was because your experience in the hospital, she has taken on in a somewhat of that.
Certain of her energy, maybe, but no,
No, you definitely are Kristen in your personality, but I feel like the book started with Amy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, the book, the idea, and the character that's driving the theme is Amy for sure. Yeah. Kristen's the one with more to learn at that point. Amy's the one who needs to find peace and move forward.
She can double fist.
So let's talk a little bit about how you came to be writers, because it wasn't I think both of you actually, Jamie, had sort of ambitions about writing from a very young age, and Rea, you actually wrote a novel right after college, is that right? So, but then you moved away from it, and then you came back to it. So what was that journey about? Why do you think you didn't stick with it from the start, and what made you come back to it?
Okay, Cliff's Notes version. But I actually wanted to be an Olympic gymnast. I did not want to be a writer, though I grew up with a father who he's such a great writer. It kills me that he's never tried to get published. He introduced me to poetry and books and just short stories and all of the things. But I also didn't really want to go to college. I was a total nerd, but I just wanted to go to New York and go to work and, but I did. I ended up studying creative writing, started out as a journalism major, and I saw all of my professors were published. And I was like, cool, I need to be published too. This, I need to get on this. But in all 4 years, I never had not one class about the business of publishing, how to make money, how to read a contract, how to get published. It was all about craft. So I didn't know anything about getting published, but I wrote a book. I was a competitive boxer in college and ended up getting brain surgery my freshman year of college. And during that week that I was off with 4 titanium plates, 16 screws, and 14 staples in my head, I came up with this idea for a novel that is so bad we're not going to talk about it. But I was like, I'm getting this published. This is great. And so I did get a publisher interested, and I was so desperate to be a published author that I didn't realize it was not a really legitimate deal. It wasn't a great publisher. It was my dreams were like right here, and then it did not go the way that I was hoping that it would go. So I realized that I needed to learn about the publishing industry. So I actually went to work for literary agents, for editors. I became a ghostwriter. I actually turned to nonfiction, had 4 nonfiction books traditionally published. They were so successful. Not one person in this room has ever heard of them, so that's great. And I realized too, like, oh, I can get published, but I don't know what an author platform is. I don't really know what I'm doing still, book over book over book. So I, again, worked with a ton of other authors, worked with people in the industry, and then it wasn't until, honestly, the end of 2016 that I got an idea for what would become my true debut, what I consider my true debut, Not Her Daughter. And then I decided I was going to treat it like a business going forward and really understand what I was doing. So I had definitely some hiccups along the way in the beginning.
It's hard not to have hiccups, I think. So first of all, that is a fascinating story, and I'm like, I have so many questions, but I won't bore everyone with my personal questions. So for me, when I was young, I loved movies. My dad and I were movie holics. We would have, when my parents divorced, we would have movie marathon days. We'd go to those mega complexes back in the day and go from literally the 1 o'clock show, the 3 o'clock, we would do movies. And then also I loved like the serial nighttime dramas. And so I was sort of an early adopter of fan fiction before that was even a thing, right? Like I would sit there and be like, they should have said this, they should have done that. So I used to say, I want to write. But my parents, neither of them were very supportive of that because they knew nothing about it. And my dad was just very set, like, you're going to get your law degree, you're going to get an MBA, you're always going to have a good job, so you never have to be in a bad marriage. That was his whole spiel, which made sense. I'm like, okay. So I did that, and I was a lawyer, and then I had kids, and I stayed home. And once they were in grade school, I was really fortunate that my husband's job allowed me to stay home and make that choice. And then I had time. And I was like, I'm going to write a book. And kind of like you, I wrote it in secret. I didn't tell anybody because I thought I didn't know what I was doing. And what if I don't finish? And I didn't want to be embarrassed and tell people and then not do it. So I just didn't tell anybody until I finished it. And like you, it is under the bed. It's mine's under the bed, and it will never be seen. But I was so in love with the process. I just enjoyed it so much, but I recognized that I didn't really know what I was doing. I had some instinct for story just because I had, seen so many and read a lot of books. And so that's when I started to learn and buy the craft books and go to the workshops and starting to cut my teeth on different manuscripts. So it actually took me, my 3rd manuscript got me my literary agent and then led me into the contract with my publisher and so forth. So that was, so it's a little less interesting than your story, but that was my process.
So and here's our story. So Jamie and I have walked similar paths.
You read the book that's under the
Yes. So we were both attorneys, and then we both were stay-home moms. I got divorced, you stayed married, but we both were stay-home moms who then decided to return to writing. So I also had one of those horrible novels that I wrote in secret because why do we do that? Why? It's like, it's so, it's almost like you feel that people are going to think you are saying you're going to like suddenly be that Olympic gymnast 20 years after you've quit. It feels like you're being arrogant or something. It's so many writers. I mean, I don't know if it's just women or men as well, but we write in secret and we don't tell anyone because we don't want people to think that we're, I don't know, crazy or too ambitious. I don't know. Anyway, it's a common thing. And so I did the same thing, and I wrote this terrible novel and ended up getting an agent. And it was a long journey, but I had given up writing. So when we met, we were introduced, actually, I was dating someone, then you knew his brother or something and put us in touch. This was years ago.
Yeah, I think I actually met you through Suzanne.
Oh,
but
okay.
You were also you also were dating Milt's
Okay, I was
brother.
also dating Milt's. Okay. Anyway, you all don't need to know about that. But, and yes, that not worthy of her romance novels. We'll just put it that way. So anyway, so we had lunch, and I had gone back to practicing law, and we had lunch, and you were just getting started and wanted advice, and I was so down about publishing because I had published 2 novels. that didn't sell well and were not, really going to be financially sustaining. And I remember at that lunch telling you, kind of like, yeah, good luck with that, because it's like, this business is horrible. And then you kept going and you got your agent, and then I kept writing, and I eventually, so we like crossed paths, and now here we are both. It's so, but that's, we're still fighting. So let's sort of talk about that, and then we'll take questions. But I mean, I bring that story up because I think like the journey to get from wanting to be a writer, wanting to write, to actually making a career of it is so different for everyone. But it is such a crazy winding road, and you can't predict it, you can't forge it, you can't take certain steps and be guaranteed of anything. So here we are, right? We all have multiple books out. What is still joyful? What is not joyful? Rhea's like, damn, Wendy, why did you ask that question? No, but what sitting now with this success and, just in that it is now an established career, what is still joyful, what is not?
Okay, so this is actually really easy for me to answer. The joyful things, like I said earlier, today I opened an email and it was a beautiful letter, and I felt so humbled that this woman shared her very personal, horrifying college date rape story with me, and felt like that, just to touch a stranger to the point where they look you up and reach out to you and say, hey, you did it, you did this and it helped me. And that is my number one thing I'm joyful about. My number two thing is I do enjoy the process of creating like worlds, and when life can be chaotic, I can come to my computer and my world has order. Even in its chaos, I've controlled it, so it feels safe to me, and I like that part of it. I love the writer community. Every single writer I've ever met is so interesting. I always feel like the most boring person in the room because my life, I'm no boxer. So those are the joyful parts. Is the people I meet, the reader responses. The one thing, the hardest part, well, it's a very subjective, right? Any art. If you're a painter, maybe some of you are painters, or you're in some other artistic field, it's very, decorators even, like anything, it's very subjective. And so unlike the law, where you kind of knew what the rules were, and if you did certain things, you got certain results, in this, it's not that black and white at all. And that can be very difficult for someone who likes to understand the rules. And also the pressure that increases on authors now to do a lot of their own marketing, to be omnipresent on social media, and all of these things that I'm convinced aren't really that helpful. In fact, can I ask the audience a question? A show of hands. How many of you follow authors on Facebook or Instagram? Oh, so a decent amount of you. Okay. And does following them really make a difference of whether or not you would buy their next book? Or is it just, if you like the last book, you're likely to pick up the next book? Like, if they got off social media, would that make a big difference? Say no.
We all want a reason to delete all of our social media accounts.
It's very exhausting, and comparison is the thief of joy, and everyone puts their best face forward on social media, and so when you're not having a good moment in your writing journey, and it looks like everybody else is, that's really hard, because it's a solitary profession. As much as we try to build communities around ourselves, you're sitting at your desk alone a lot, and you don't get a lot of immediate feedback on anything, and so that can be very soul-crushing at times, but the highs are high enough for me at this point that I still will continue to do it.
Don't get me started on social media. We are not meant to connect with. It's been proven that our brains cannot contain the hundreds or thousands of connections that we have on a sometimes daily basis. But we're talking about joy. Real quick, so we can open up to questions. Yes, joys, doing things like this, meeting readers. I live in Nashville, so I wouldn't get to meet all of you. This is really awesome. Writer community, unparalleled. It probably is what keeps me going, is just meeting like-minded people that are all like, this business is crazy. What are we doing? And for me, giving back's super important. So 80% of all people want to write books, but there's no like cheat sheet on exactly how to do it. You can Google it, but it has been very important to me to work with first-time authors. I've worked with hundreds and hundreds of authors to date who come to me, they want to write a book, and we figure out what their goals are, which publication path is right, and then the process to get their books out into the world. And I've literally watched people come to me with a concept and leave with a book or a best-selling book, or they get that agent or book deal of their dreams. And that is like, I get more excited about that than I do my own work, because it's just seeing someone else's dreams come true. And then I crush them because I tell them about the realities of the publishing industry. But I want them to have all of the information so they can make informed decisions. So that's very joyful.
Yeah, and Rea, actually, a woman I went to high school with, who reconnected with me and wanted to write a book about her experience working in her field. And Rea worked with her on a proposal and got her a book deal. So it was really, really nice. And yes, every morning, or whenever I decide I have to check in on Instagram, inevitably, it's like, oh my God, somebody got a TV deal. And then I'm like, I'm happy for her, but I'm so jealous, and I'm so conflicted now, and now I'm having an emotional meltdown, and now my whole day is ruined.
It's like a distraction. It's a distraction.
It really is. And then you grapple, because you do have that reaction of, oh my gosh, I'm being left behind, and oh, I don't have that.
That's why I mute everybody, so
Yeah.
I don't see anybody's anything unless I go and seek it out. So they don't know that that they're muted.
Well, now I know.
But yeah, now you know. So you can just go to what you want to see.
Yeah, but that is what it's like. It's very different, I think, for people who are connected on social media for, to see their friends, to see what everyone's up to, follow celebrities or fashion or whatever. For us, it's like just constantly going on and seeing what everyone else is sort of attaining in their profession, which is your profession, and what you then don't have, because nobody puts on, oh, I just got another rejection from a publisher, or I just got another 1-star review, or it's always positives.
I do love when I don't know if you guys have seen, sometimes on Facebook or Instagram, it can be fun when you see authors read their bad reviews. And I mean, some of them are pretty funny. So there can be some fun on social media.
So before we take questions, I just want to circle back one more time. Tell everyone here what they're going to feel, or what is at the essence of your book. Because I want to circle back and make sure everybody checks the books out before they leave.
I have had, like I said, just some really lovely response from readers to this book, that they went in a little skeptical because, of course, it sounds like it's going to be heavy. And I have trigger warnings, suicidal ideation and prescription drug abuse and things like that. But that they all cry, but it's a very uplifting. At the end, they leave and they feel empowered to make some changes in their life, which was really my goal, because when I went through that process of deciding I'm no longer going to, I just basically to be more intentional with each day, each gift of the day. And that is what I want the reader to leave the book feeling, like this matters, and all of us at any time, anything can happen. And so it's not just a trite Hallmark greeting card thing to say. It really does matter. And I've been happy to see that most readers are taking that away from the book. So that's a proud moment for me.
Did we write the same book? Because that's my message.
You guys sort of did. I'm not going to lie. They both have similar.
That's exactly the message, is just appreciating what you have. I feel like as parents specifically, we can get just so inundated with going day to day, not paying attention, griping at our children, and it can all change like that. So just loving your people. And I've had a lot of parents reach out to me like, I have been like squeezing my child tighter and just appreciating the days and just being with them. I think being present is huge, and just being in the moment while we can.
And definitely, both of these books will make you sort of cry, but also they're very cathartic, and they make you want to just embrace life and embrace the people that you love in your life, and to look for beauty every day. So everyone buy their books. Okay, now questions. Sorry. Okay, well, that's great. So someone who just bought a book from an Instagram. Was it a post from a bookstore or a library? Post from a bookstore. That's great. Excellent. Anybody else?
Would you talk a little bit about your new book?
Oh, me? Yes. So I think I have 2 books over there. So What Remains came out in June. It's a story of a cold case detective, Elise Sutton, who takes one life to save another in a shooting incident. And it sets off a terrifying game of cat and mouse with the man whose life she saved, who becomes obsessed with her. And she has to use all of her sort of skills and knowledge to sort of keep herself safe and to keep her family safe. It's not a procedural at all. It's a psychological thriller, and it really dives into trauma, and the trauma that both she and this man suffer in this incident, and how it then follows them in the weeks that follow. And then the other book that's out, it's actually not out till the 17th, so shh, but if you buy it, it's called American Girl, and this was a passion project I wrote during the pandemic. It's a little autobiographical in the setting of the sandwich shop. It's about a 17-year-old autistic girl in a small town in Pennsylvania who gets sort of caught in the crosshairs after her boss at the sandwich shop and the owner of the sandwich shop is murdered. And she may know more than what she's letting on, and some people know that she may know. So she's got people on her sort of chasing her, and she's also trying to keep all of the people in her life safe, because all of them are possible suspects in this murder. And so they are both, interestingly, written in first person and present tense, I think, both of them. Yeah, so they're very urgent and very in the moment, but 2 totally different voices. One is a 30-something cop with 2 kids and sort of a fractured marriage and complicated life, and the other is this 17-year-old autistic girl who is, what was fun to write about her is that she, because she has some deficits in understanding people and social cues, she's created a playbook and used sort of the intellectual side of her brain to create a playbook in understanding people. So she has a list of rules that she applies to people, and it makes her extremely perceptive about everyone in her life. So she knows all of these people that she works with, and even her mother and her stepfather, very, very well, because she's been observing them very carefully. So she brings to life all of these other characters. So those are both for sale. And that was it's the reason they're coming out so close together is the American Girl was an Audible original. So it came out in audio in 2021, and it was a bestseller for them for many weeks. And so we sold the print rights, and it's also both actually have been optioned now for one for a TV show and one for film. So hopefully that will happen. Hey. So are there any more questions before oh yeah.
We should talk.
This is what Rea does. Yeah, Rea, do you want to just take a quick stab at that?
Is it fiction or is it nonfiction?
No, it's a memoir of
Oh, it's a memoir.
mom's life.
Yeah, so yes, we can talk because we could go into it, but it's really figuring out what your goals are with the book. There are a couple of barriers to entry with traditional publishing. So if you want to get a book deal, if you want to get an agent a book deal, memoir is the toughest to sell without having a really robust author platform. There are ways around that, but that's usually where we'd start the conversation and just kind of really talking through the realities there. And then if you really want to try to get the agent and the traditional publisher, figuring out ways to boost up that author platform platform first before you start pitching. And then with my clients, I pitch on their behalf to all the agents that I know and trust, so you get your foot actually in the door and will actually get someone to talk to you, because that is half the battle.
That's great.
Yeah, yep.
Yeah, and that is, I think, those are really two different paths, and if you self-publish, it's really just because you want it out there for, whoever's interested. But if you are really looking to have it be something to establish a career or to find a wide audience, I think most people would agree that getting an agent and a traditional publishing deal is the only way to do that these days. There's so many self-published books, and unless you have like a celebrity platform or a huge social media platform, it's very hard to make headway self-publishing without that.
That's a great question.
I'll start this because my answer has changed over time. So when I started in romance, that was a more important issue, right? Because a lot of romance novels, the reader wants to see that hero. They want to see their size and smell their cologne and all that stuff.
Keep it PG, Jamie.
Yes, so there was a lot of that. And I'm finding recently that I'm forgetting to even think about it, because now I'm so much more like, who are they? And what is really important in the scene, and the physical manifestation of a person tends to be the least important thing, unless that is key to something in the story, like the way that they look is something really relevant to a plot point, then it would matter more. But otherwise, it's, I'm much more vague, and I try now to drop it in really subtle ways too, so it feels natural and not like you're being like, here's a snapshot, so.
Yeah, I like the reader to kind of create their own picture, unless I'm trying to get a TV film option, and then I'll drop in this character kind of looks like this actor, or that's kind of a fun thing. But I think I could do more physical description probably of the main character. I'll describe the other characters, but I'm weird about that. Sometimes I don't even really have a clear picture of my protagonist, and I want the reader to kind of make their own conclusions, come to their own conclusions.
I do the same thing. I actually will go through an entire book without describing almost anything. Rooms, towns, it's all in the head. It's so much in their head. So you'll know the characters, everything they think, and the way they think, what they think, maybe how they speak, without any physical description. I just forget to do it because I'm so obsessed with what's going on in their emotional lives. But I do agree. It depends on the book. It totally depends on the genre and the book, and the story, and whether it's relevant.
Yeah, I know people do Scrivener and do all this different stuff. I use Google Docs. Actually, it's what I use for all my clients, but it automatically saves. I've had some terrible, shutdown issues with Microsoft Word, and I can write myself notes, and I absolutely love Google Docs, and then I can download it in a Word format, which is usually what your agent or editor prefers.
I've always written in Word, but I tried Scrivener for one book, and I struggled with it, but probably because I was so used to doing it the other way. It was so unfamiliar. There are some benefits to Scrivener for sure, because you can really segment, and you can keep all these. What I did like about it is you can set it up so that, in the middle is the Word document part, but then on the side you can have notes and stuff, so I could put links to research right in the chapter where it was relevant, so that I could refer to it later if I needed to find it. I could put a summary of in this chapter, this is what happens, in another little box, and then it keeps track of your outline as you go. So when you're editing, or when you get your editor's notes in particular, and I need to change this, this, and this, you can go right to those. It's a little easier than having to scroll through, 400 pages of Word.
I just am in Word, and I have a laptop that's so old that the cord is duct taped, and I had a friend. I was I'm gonna go to the gym. She's like, why don't you just walk up and down the stairs with your laptop a couple of times? So that's how. I'm so technologically challenged. It's.
Should we sign some books?
Yes. Thank you all so much.